Welcome to Policy on Demand. I'm Sindhu Blume.
And I'm Scott McCandless. It is the week of June 26th, and this is your Monday briefing. Congress is on a 2-week Independence Day recess and will return the week of July 10th for a 3-week legislative work period.
Between the debt ceiling, the budget, possible tax legislation, treaties, and let's not forget about Pillar 2, there has been a lot to process recently in the tax world, which is why we are fortunate to have Chairman Camp with us today to share his insights on some of those developments. Chairman Camp, welcome, and thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you, and good to be with you both.
So let's start with the House Ways and Means Committee. They, on July 14th, voted along party lines to approve an economic growth package, but that bill has not yet been brought to the House floor. What's next for this legislation after Congress returns from recess?
Well, as we've talked before, Sindhu, on this program, that this bill is an important statement of where the Republicans see tax policy going, and particularly with regard to research and development, the interest expensing, bonus depreciation. So it remains that framework. Although what we've seen is this very close majority that the Republicans have. There are some fissures on some issues, and particularly the state and local tax deduction, or SALT. And they've really been unable to resolve that issue. There are a number of proposals out there on the SALT issue, but I don't see this bill moving forward until that issue is resolved. And of course, the next step would be a vote on the House floor. So as a result of that, I think this could be delayed. It could be delayed till the fall, and this may potentially remain just a committee product until the end of the year.
Chairman Camp, the Joint Committee on Taxation recently issued a report looking at the Pillar 2 global minimum tax, and they found that the revenue impact to the United States fisc would be significant and negative. What are you talking about with companies with regard to this, and how are you advising them in light of OECD developments?
Well, Scott, this is an important report from the Joint Committee on Taxation, and JCT, as we like to call it, is the nonpartisan arbiter of these revenue issues in the Congress and is well respected by both sides. So this is really a result that both parties have to take seriously. And I think initially the first look at this is it really kind of emboldens those who think the OECD is not a good deal for the United States. Because what it says is, under any scenario, whether the U.S. adopts Pillar 2 or not, the U.S. loses revenue. And that's important, certainly given our debt and deficit and the challenges we saw on the debt limit increase and the fiscal issues that Congress is grappling with. So I think this is an important development. And the question is, what happens going forward? What do those who favor Pillar 2, and as we know, the OECD issues were not enacted into law, even when Democrats controlled all, the Congress, the Senate and the House and the White House. So what will those advocates for Pillar 2, Treasury particularly, what will their response be on this? And then I think for business, I think the issue is what happens next. And as we've seen, the business community has been developing a common strategy on how to deal with these issues. First, kind of a two-pronged strategy here. What do they do if these measures are enacted? And secondly, what do they do to try to fix them? And I think the focus will continue to be on that. Are there any areas where this could be a fixed or changed? And I think the talk is a lot about what we call safe harbors. Will the U.S. minimum tax be a qualified minimum tax under OECD rules? I think that's something that companies are looking to try to address, and that's an important thing for them to do. The other thing is this OECD proposal seems to favor a scenario where the companies or countries that provide cash incentives as opposed to or what we call refundable incentives compared to the United States. And so there will be some safe harbor there. And this really is this bigger issue of, will the OECD process or rules allow the U.S. income of U.S. multinationals to be taxed by other countries? And that is a big issue, and those are kind of all intertwined. So those are, I think, some of the issues that business needs to look at and find ways to kind of move forward. And so I think in the next month, we'll be, learning more about Pillar 1. And then the question is, what, if anything, will be done with regard to Pillar 2? And that, I think, is something for companies to watch very carefully.
So House Appropriators recently considered a fiscal year 2024 spending legislation that would reduce IRS funding by $1.1 billion, rescind $10 billion of funding provided by the Inflation Reduction Act, and eliminate U.S. funding for the OECD. How should companies view this opening bid from the House, and how do you expect the Senate to respond?
Well, Sindhu, we saw this recent increase in IRS funding really to be a target in the debt limit negotiations, and there was a significant amount, 20 billion, reduced as a result, as a kind of side agreement to the debt limit discussion. So this is an area where Congress has gone. It looks from the appropriations process, at least the beginning of this, that the Republicans would like to go further and use that. And the significance here is there was a debt limit agreement on sort of what the overall budget spending or budget cap would be for the United States government. But what happened is, shortly after that, is in the Republican conference, which can be somewhat fractious, there were some members who said, well, we need to reduce that by 120 billion more. So what you're seeing is the Republican appropriations bills being written at a level below where the debt limit agreement occurred. And so, yes, I think they'll continue to go back to this as a source of funding. They have in the past, and they're going to continue to go after this IRS funding in the future. And so it was funding for the agency, and also in this proposal, a reduction of $1 billion in enforcement as well. And I think that'll continue. But we'll see this proposal in the House, at least the beginning of this, is not going to be acceptable to the Senate. So there will be a compromise there. But I think at the end of the day, there will be a continued reduction in IRS funding. But we'll see.
And finally, Chairman Camp, last week there was a lot of fanfare over Indian Prime Minister Modi's visit to the United States. Having participated in state visits yourself during your own career in Congress, what is the significance of this visit and the relationship between the United States and India?
Well, this is a significant visit because certainly there are, a number of cultural and family ties between the U.S. and India. But what you're seeing, this really underscores India's importance as a diplomatic and economic power. And I noticed a few months ago that the UN said that India surpassed China in terms of population. So India is now the largest country in the world. This is significant because they are big enough to be a counterweight to China on economic issues, which, as we know, the U.S. faces challenges there. But also, I think there's a military importance here as well. India has typically purchased much of their defense weaponry from Russia, and I think this is something the United States is going to look at as well. So when you look at India with both economic, diplomatic, and military issues, this is really an important ally. And I think it was Prime Minister Modi, who said the U.S. is the oldest democracy, but India is the largest democracy. So I think this is an important point at really trying to build this relationship on a number of levels between the U.S. and India, which will be important, I think, for all of the issues we're facing in that region, both economic and military.
Chairman Camp, as always, thank you so much for your time and your insights. Appreciate you being with us.
Thank you both. Great to be here.
And for our viewers, in case you missed it, included in the email with this episode is the latest Week in Review with Pat Brown and a special episode with Matt DiGiuseppe of PwC's Governance Insights Center.
You'll also find my interview with Bashan Sethi on PwC's latest workforce survey. Lots of great insight there, both on the state of the workforce and lessons learned for employers. Be sure to check that out. And thank you, as always, for watching, and stay with Policy on Demand for the latest developments in Washington and around the world. Take care.